Imagine your 11-year-old daughter in her wheelchair, eyes wide with terror as the HOA president's spoiled son flicks open a switchblade just 10 feet away, the sun glinting off the steel like it's no big deal. And the president herself? She stands there in her pastel cardigan, arms crossed and actually shrugs. He's just a boy testing boundaries, she says, like we're debating lawn edging instead of a felony. That's exactly how my nightmare kicked off in Willow Creek Estates. And trust me, what happened next turned their precious harmony into the kind of chaos that made the whole neighborhood finally wake up. I'm Nathan Brooks, 42, widower ex-tactical trainer who traded SWAT callouts for school runs and bedtime stories after my wife Clara died in that car wreck. I picked Willow Creek because the glossy brochure promised safety, structure, and community values. What it actually delivered was Regina Caldwell, our HOA president for 8 straight years, and her iron-fisted obsession with beige everything. Regina didn't just enforce rules. She worshipped them like a cult leader handing out newsletters that read like sermons. A harmonious streetscape elevates us all, she'd write, complete with matching fonts and little clip art houses. Our house was the only one that dared to look different. The ramp wasn't some eyesore. I had the builder submit plans 6 weeks before closing. Teak wood, gentle 112 slope, solar lights along the rails so Sophie wouldn't be afraid of the dark. The same fear that started after her mom's accident when the power went out during one of her episodes. Sophie has a rare neuromuscular condition. The wheelchair is permanent, but her smile still lights up rooms. Those 5 little lights blinked on every night like tiny stars she counted before bed. She even helped stain the wood, her gloved hands leaving tiny fingerprints I refused to sand away. That ramp was our promise, not a violation. But Regina saw heresy. First citation arrived in a glossy envelope tucked into the mailbox like junk mail. Section 4.2, Unauthorized Architectural Modification. Non-conforming slope and lighting. Fine, $250 due in 14 days. I emailed the approved plans, the city permit, the ADA compliance letter. Radio silence. Then the daily fines started compounding. I showed up at the next board meeting, polite as could be, folder in hand. Ms. Caldwell, I said, voice steady. These documents prove the ramp meets every code. Federal law, actually. She smiled that smile. The one that looked warm on the surface but felt like ice water down your back. Mr. Brooks, we're not disputing the law. We're protecting property values for everyone. Think of the children. The other board members nodded like puppets. Only Harlan Whitaker, the treasurer, kept his eyes on his notepad, pen tapping nervously. He didn't vote yes that night. Small thing, but I noticed. That's when the whispers started. Regina's monthly newsletter ran a reminder about certain residents prioritizing personal needs over community standards. Neighbors who used to wave now looked away. Someone left a printed article on my porch, Single Dads and Sympathy Scams. Slandered. Quietly. Efficiently. I stayed silent, kept smiling for Sophie, but I started recording every call, saving every email, installing a second hidden camera under the eave that even the HOA inspectors missed. Then the sabotage began. One morning Sophie's chair wouldn't start. Charger unplugged from the garage outlet. Not yanked, just neatly coiled on the floor like a message. Security footage from my system? Wiped clean for those exact hours. I checked the HOA cameras they controlled. Corrupted, they said. Right. Sophie didn't cry. She just looked at me with those big eyes and tapped her speech tablet. Home. I carried her inside, hooked up the backup, and felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't ignorance. This was targeted. And the only person who looked uncomfortable at the next board meeting was Harlan. He lingered by the side door afterward. You didn't vote, I said quietly, falling into step beside him. He didn't stop walking. She controls the contracts. My business is the only one that gets the seasonal lighting jobs. If I cross her, he swallowed. My niece has CP. Same age as your girl. I can't keep watching. I let him go. But I knew the crack was there. Weeks dragged on. More rocks on the ramp. More notes in the community app calling me that difficult single dad. Sophie started drawing less. She'd sit at the top of the ramp, fingers tracing the little stars we'd carved together. And I'd watch her from the window wondering how much longer I could stay silent. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Sophie was out back sketching by the garden shed, sunlight filtering through the lattice. I was inside grabbing lemonade when I heard her tablet blare the emergency word. Help! I bolted through the back door. There was Derek Caldwell, Regina's 17-year-old golden boy, standing 10 feet away, switchblade open, flicking it lazily like he was bored. Sophie's chair was backed against the shed wall. She couldn't turn fast enough. The blade caught the light exactly like that first day. Put it down, I said, voice low, one hand instinctively hovering near my belt even though I wasn't carrying anymore. Regina appeared from around the corner, arms crossed, cardigan perfect. Oh, for heaven's sake, Derek was just showing off. Boys will be boys. You're escalating, Mr. Brooks. I glanced at Sophie. Her tablet flashed help again. I hit record on my phone openly now. I already called the sheriff. And this is being documented. Regina's smile twitched. You're making this personal. The ramp disrupts the view from the street. We have standards. Derek smirked, blade still out. Yeah, Dad says rules are rules. The wind rattled the shed tarp like a warning. For 3 long seconds nobody moved. Then Derek finally closed the knife and sauntered off, Regina following with her chin high, like she just won a debate about patio furniture. But something in me snapped into focus. This wasn't about aesthetics anymore. This was about control, and they just crossed the one line I would never forgive. I didn't yell. I didn't chase. I knelt beside Sophie, wiped her tears and whispered, "They're not going to touch you again." Then I went inside, pulled out the folder I'd been quietly building for months, and started connecting they didn't know existed. Because while Regina was busy playing queen, I'd been the patient peasant collecting every receipt. The next morning the first rock hit the ramp at dusk. I heard the clack against the teak and saw Sophie flinch mid-sketch. Another followed, rolling to a stop beside her wheel. Derek stood across the street behind his mailbox, not even hiding, that lazy smirk plastered on his face like he was daring me. I walked out slowly, picked up the rock and held it up. "This how your mom teaches enforcement these days?" He shrugged. "She doesn't care about your ugly ramp. She cares about rules. You're the one making it about your kid." I didn't throw it back. I didn't raise my voice. Just looked at him until the smirk faltered for half a second. Then I turned and went inside. But I had the second camera footage, clear as day, time-stamped, Derek's face unmistakable. I added it to the folder labeled pattern. That night I sat on the porch with Sophie while the solar lights blinked on one by one. She traced the carved stars with her finger and tapped her tablet. "Why?" I told her the truth, simple. Because some people are scared of anything that doesn't look exactly like their picture books. But we're not moving. And we're not hiding. She nodded, but I saw the fear lingering. That's when I decided silence was no longer enough. I needed allies, proof, and a way to make their own rules choke them. First step, City Hall. I waited 40 minutes for the clerk, then asked for the original permit file on Lot 27. She printed it, stamped, signed, approved 2 weeks before we closed. The HOA portal version? That approval line had mysteriously vanished. I took photos of both. Second step, the hidden camera footage of the Charger sabotage. I enhanced it myself, old tactical skills still useful, and caught Derek's hoodie in the exact moment he reached through the fence. Third step, I started leaving polite notes at the mailboxes. Not accusations. Just questions. Anyone else notice how certain board decisions seem to contradict city permits? Neighbors started replying privately. One mom whose elderly father had been fined for a grab bar. Another family whose flag color was non-harmonious. Cracks everywhere. But the real turning point came when Harlan showed up at my door after dark. Brown windbreaker zipped to his chin like armor. He carried a manila folder like it might bite him. "I can't sleep," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "My niece, she has the same lights on her ramp. Regina called yours emotional manipulation. I edited the minutes like she told me. I can't do it anymore." He slid the folder across the table. Inside. Raw audio of board meetings where they discussed handling the Brooks situation, screenshots of deleted emails, even the vendor contract that gave Harlan's business to anyone who voted her way. One transcript made my blood run cold. They'd laughed about Sophie's lights being sympathy bait. Harlan's hand shook. She'll know it was me. But I can't look my niece in the eye if I stay quiet. I poured him water. You won't be alone. I've got a contact at the State Disability Rights Office. This goes federal now. He left lighter. I stayed up until dawn organizing everything into the master file. Willow Creek ADA breach. Complete dossier. Every citation, every erased record, every threat. I burned copies to encrypted drives, one hidden under the floorboards, one hand-delivered to an old colleague who still worked pro bono civil rights cases. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for Regina to overplay her hand. She did. 3 days later, a gold-trimmed notice was hand-delivered. Final compliance walkthrough. Thursday, 10 a.m. Refusal equals lien. Regina was coming herself to verify the ramp, with a local blogger she'd tipped off for community interest coverage. I smiled for the first time in months, because I'd already scheduled the independent inspector for 9:50. And the state investigator had confirmed they'd be watching remotely. Thursday morning, the neighborhood felt electric. Sophie sat on the porch in her favorite Galaxy hoodie, tablet ready. The inspector arrived first, clipboard, level tool, body cam rolling. Then Regina's Lexus glided up, Derek slouching behind her, and the blogger with his camera. Regina stepped out in full armor. Sky blue blazer, perfect lipstick, smile dialed to 11. Mr. Brooks, let's keep this civil. We simply want visual consistency. The inspector didn't blink. He walked the ramp, measured the slope, checked the lights, scanned the city permit. All features fully compliant. HOA citations directly contradict municipal approval and ADA Title III. Regina's smile cracked. We're talking aesthetics, not code. I held up the printed state complaint I'd filed the night before. And I'm talking retaliatory discrimination against a minor with a disability, including the knife incident your son thought was funny. The blogger's camera swung. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Regina's voice rose an octave. That is a gross exaggeration. Harlan's car pulled up right then. He stepped out holding his own folder, voice steady for the first time in years. I have the unedited audio, the deleted emails, the contracts. It's all going to the state today. The air went still. Regina looked from me to Harlan to the growing crowd of neighbors who'd wandered over. For the first time, the Queen had no script. The emergency HOA meeting was called for that same Thursday night. The community center smelled like lemon polish and fear. Folding chairs filled faster than anyone had ever seen. Regina stood at the front table in a sharper suit than usual, lavender blouse, gold pin gleaming like a badge of office. She prepared her slides, photos of the ramp zoomed in on the lights, captioned visual pollution affecting property values. But the room wasn't hers anymore. I sat near the back with Sophie, her wheelchair lights pulsing soft blue. Harlan sat off to the side, no longer on the board panel. Whispers rippled when I stood and walked to the front, envelope in hand. Before you start your presentation, I said, voice calm but carrying, the State Disability Rights Office has opened a formal investigation. Here's the confirmation. It includes timestamps of every citation, every deleted file, every board discussion where you personally directed harassment against my daughter. Gasps. Real ones. Regina's projector clicker froze mid-slide. I kept going. And this, I held up a second flash drive, is raw audio from your meetings. The part where you laughed about emotional traps and called a child's safety lights sympathy bait. Plus footage of your son tampering with medical equipment and pulling a knife. All backed up off-site. You can't erase this one. The moderator, one of her usual allies, looked like he wanted to disappear. Someone in the third row stood up. Is this why they cited my mom's oxygen porch cover? Another voice. My flag was red for exactly 3 hours and I got fined. The room shifted from polite murmurs to open questions. Regina tried to regain control, voice sweet as artificial sweetener. This is not the forum for unverified accusations. Mr. Brooks has been difficult since day one. Harlan stood. The room quieted instantly. His hands still trembled, but his words didn't. I confirm every word. I was told to delete records. I was pressured to vote against my conscience. I have the contracts that prove she used board power for personal business favors. And I'm done being silent. He placed his own folder on the table. The moderator opened it, skimmed one page and went pale. That's when the vote was called, not by Regina. By 3 other residents who'd finally found their spines. Motion to suspend the president pending investigation. It passed 28-3. No cheers, just the heavy silence of a spell breaking. Regina didn't storm out. She stood there, chin high, but her shoulders had sunk half an inch. The mask was slipping. She gathered her notes with shaking hands that betrayed the perfect smile still glued on. You'll all regret this when property values drop, she hissed under her breath as she passed me. I didn't answer. I just looked at Sophie, who tapped her tablet once. Safe. Outside, reporters were already waiting. Someone had leaked the inspector's body cam footage. The clip of Regina claiming aesthetics, while the inspector documented full ADA compliance, was already trending locally. Sophie wheeled down the ramp under the soft glow of those 5 little lights, and every camera caught the moment. She didn't flinch. She just rolled forward like the queen she actually was. That night the ramp lights stayed on until dawn. Neighbors dropped off casseroles and apologies. One mom whose daughter used a walker confessed she'd been too scared to speak up about her own ramp citation. Another dad admitted he'd voted with Regina for years because the newsletter made it sound reasonable. The next morning 3 things happened at once. First, Derek was picked up by sheriff's deputies on charges of reckless endangerment, tampering with medical equipment, and brandishing a weapon. The officer at my door actually shook my hand. We've been getting anonymous tips for months. Your package made it official. Second, Regina submitted her resignation via 1-line email to the acting president. No speech, no farewell newsletter, just effective immediately. Third, the state investigator called. We're expanding the probe to the entire board. Your dossier was thorough. I hung up and sat on the porch with Sophie. She handed me her sketch pad. The new drawing showed the ramp extending into a long path through the neighborhood. Every house lit up. People of all ages gathered around the glowing stars. In the center sat a small figure in a wheelchair holding a pencil like a torch. I traced it with my finger. You did this. She tapped twice. We. The weeks that followed felt like the neighborhood took its first real breath in years. The new acting board, including Harlan as treasurer by unanimous vote, repealed the visual harmony clause that had been weaponized for a decade. Fines dropped to 0. Citations vanished from records. And for the first time, residents started talking about what they actually needed instead of what Regina had told them to want. I hosted a small gathering on the porch one Friday night. Nothing fancy: folding chairs, store-bought cookies, Sophie's lights on full brightness. People brought stories instead of excuses. The woman whose mother had been hospitalized told how her porch rail was removed for aesthetics while she was away. The veteran with PTSD admitted he'd been afraid to install motion lights because of the color restrictions. Every tale circled back to the same truth. Rules disguised as reason, control wrapped in concern. Sophie rolled between them, sketch pad open, listening more than drawing. When the sun dipped and the lights clicked on automatically, nobody spoke for a long moment. They just watched those 5 tiny stars push back the dark. Harlan stayed after everyone else left. He stood at the edge of the ramp, hands in his pockets, staring at the carved stars. She changed everything, he said quietly. I thought he meant Regina. Then he looked at Sophie. No. Your girl did. He left without another word, but his shoulders were straighter than I'd ever seen. Inside, Sophie flipped to a new page in her sketch pad, still unfinished. The ramp now stretched into the whole neighborhood, houses glowing, and in the center stood one small figure holding that pencil high. She slid it across the table. I smiled. We're just getting started. Because the real victory wasn't the suspension or the resignation or even Derek's upcoming court date. The real victory was the silence breaking. The one Regina counted on, the polite, fearful, mind your own business silence that lets petty tyrants rule. That silence died the moment one little girl's ramp glowed brighter than their rules. And if you're watching this from your own HOA battlefield, maybe staring at a citation for your own necessary modification, maybe wondering if you're the only one tired of beige tyranny, know this, they only win when we stay quiet. So tell me in the comments, was the HOA right to protect property values by terrorizing a child in a wheelchair, or was the real crime letting power-hungry Karens rewrite federal law with newsletter fonts? Who was truly in the wrong here? Drop your story below. I read every single one. And if this one hit home, smash that subscribe button, because there are a lot more of these waiting to be told. See you in the next one. Stay safe out there.